like Chicago's getting some weather. This is the tree outside my parents' house. And after having lived in Kansas for 5 years or whatever, they're hiding in the basement, so that's not good. They're on me. I trust your judgment in looking at the sky and knowing when it's time to hide.
Yeah, bad.
Pretty much an unlimited supply of Diet Dr. Pepper. It's in the thing at the tent. Yeah. I think we need to like fill your bag with like 10 of them. Well, in the short term, we need to just fill your bag.
It is PET scan, kind of plan, and then they run the side. Conceded our relations internal link, which none of your evidence systems our internal link is based on the perception of improved relation because of this change in U.S. rules right policy. Obviously, presidential independent action is something that you can also for their alternate cause argument or just definition of targeting that other things could exist that Obama could use. You have you conceded or say evidence which think is rules are inevitable because the decision makers are inevitably going to rely on that because of their other political and military ramifications to using things. I think things like a Republican, which means Obama will use precision strike because that's what plan restrictions to. You did not have any kind of circumvention argument to it, which means we get to say that Obama can only use personality regulations, obviously perception based, which means this the impact that your counterpoint cannot solve. There is a short-term risk of in the conflict due to attack by the LAT, that is a specific organization within Pakistan that the only U.S. joined U.S.-Pakistan cooperation can solve. That's our Nelson evidence, and when you say LAT will launch attack against India, which gets miscalculated and it causes an escalatory attack, which causes issue. We see any small risk of the solvency deficit sufficient to outweigh the mitigated risk of the disadvantage. Now on the counterpoint, first of all, permutation, you did not answer the inter-branch cooperation argument, which literally solves all the reason why the counterpoint, all the reason why plain legislation policy you did not answer. Our argument, the permutation will be shielding argument because of the responding cooperation between Congress and the executive, which there's not an inter-branch fight over which of the targeted killing the authority, which Obama's not going to defend all of their link evidence. Assume that Obama's trying to defend his authority, does not show inter-branch cooperation. All the reason why counterpoint does not legislation policy is the reason why the permutation is also not legislation policy, which you can vote alternative presumption because you have a zero in the benefit of the counterpoint. You did not make any kind of judgment argument in the Twitter, which you should not allow that because that kills the Twitter each time you have to go with contradicting argument, which you can vote on presumption. Now the solvency debate. Counterpoint cannot solve it because only the Congress that can do it. They have no evidence that indicates that the president can also allow for same signal, even if you have some sort of credibility. We have evidence that indicates that credibility is not effective, which means you cannot improve the relation between the two countries. First, chronological evidence indicates specific act by the stamp of act of approval and disapproval by the Congress is necessary to check presidential abuse. Our mental evidence is very specific, which indicates that only the Congress can send the signal. The Congress can send a signal of the relation because of the possibility of the rollback in the future. Means other countries won't be later. Obama's signals should be credible. You can see that our Ellen evidence, which is much more specific than their general executive order evidence, which should be framing each evidence in the case of Obama. Roll back his own policy in a way you did not make any kind of fiat argument that says you prevent Obama rollback, which should be that rollback will be solved. Even if you win that Obama will rollback, future administration will independently cause rollback with the policy, which means you cannot solve any kind of future perception of the laws relation. Whatever is a future evidence, also because only Congress can rate in it because our Obama signals we obviously doesn't take out a plan because it's gonna take a lot for the Congress to suddenly change their policy. However, it is easy for executives to get rid of their own policy because Obama could just decide not to do plan. All the plan is to send a good perception because the plan is a sign of congressional cohesion because we got all Congress got together and passed a policy. You should our evidence much more specific than your evidence that we should prefer our evidence. Yeah, that
solvency deficit matters in context of only going for relations internally.
Yeah, solvency deficit doesn't matter in the context of only going for the relations internally. Counterplan also links to the policies because there's a zero net benefit vote Apple perception. 200 gets here with little time lag. It makes no sense. The process of the counterplan triggers like theirs is an immense opposition, immediate opposition to bypassing debate. That's how evidence which indicates Obama could abuse power by implementing policy fiat, executive fiat that causes Congress to backlash him. Your cleaner evidence in the one issue just indicates congressional criticism causes the link, which means the sufficient nexus the executive link conceded one evidence which indicates the executive action will makes Obama to take the blame if their link is a fight between Congress and Obama. Our evidence says that Congress will fight for Obama. That's our relevant evidence. We have a links to the counterplan process. Only links to the legislation. Only links to the legislation doesn't make sense because counterplan still allow for sort of the backlash. First is the impact on review. Always if there's a first is the probability to have no defense of our specific scenario or the LET striking India causes nuclear war scenario. We have a defense to we have an impact to their impact too. As a magnitude, we have the only existential impact happening evidence because the Indo-Pak war causes extinction via nuclear winter. The scenario is that their scenario is not being lived. You should be liftified. Another that which time frame is irrelevant. A bad move going for the China when the one air concede that China abandons its defense. There's no same type of conclusion. There's no logical scenario for extinction. This is a strategic concession that the United States relations are also really recently. Our evidence says that there have been tempered over many issues and there have been no close as the ship evidence. Trade also does not solve for multiple conflict happening with the third World War I was no clear evidence it contains conflict. The Martin evidence now the uniqueness debate. I think you can vote out on the zero risk of this side because I don't think that Obama had any kind of PC first PC fail sanctions via political capital is definitively not kidding around. They haven't conceded keep remaining their evidence just one normative of how Obama should pressure Congress not what our evidence is more descriptive of how the current reaction to Congress they extend our Rubin evidence which indicates Obama doesn't have any leverage where Congress and section they're the one who has a hearing and control the bully public which Obama leverages is irrelevant if it's true that the senators are already on board. That's not because of Obama but rather because of an independent action by the individual member. That's our ideology argument about the election. That's also there's one NC uniqueness evidence as the code. It's a way for Congress to score a point with an election. It proves argument that the PC Naki extend are certainly first of all you also don't get the theoretical PC argument because that was not read by the one which you don't access that evidence. It says our Israeli lobby evidence is Rosenberg evidence indicates PC fails because of the Israeli lobby. They control things like campaign funding and GOP doesn't like Obama anyway because it's Obama. Their anti evidence was today. My side some senators were more however it's not conclusive and good. There's no PC because of healthcare massively dumb sheer evidence indicates healthcare was a toxic mix for Obama that threatens the rest of the nation that issue specific uniqueness does not make sense if you're a politician already tying the two debate together. They're gonna block in every single time. Wilson evidence in the one year also indicates probably one choice Obama which increases resistance within the Congress. The lady evidence just indicates GOP could overplay their hand, but that's not obviously happening in the status quo. If Obama cannot handle a website going down, how is he gonna able to get other congressional members on board?
Good. Good. Can you just all get the cards that are relevant?
Yeah.
You have a flash drive? Yeah, sure.
you make sure you include counterpoint text.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to jump drive or email?
Computer, actually.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
sure. Gotcha.
Thanks.
Rosie's. I don't know, I just said extra sandwiches. I figured you would be hungry. Considering, you know, love knobs. Of course it'd be the ham ones. Yeah. Do they have tuna? Let me check. There's just like a box full of them. I just grabbed 2.
I got much for snacks. Nice. I got the intel.
Cool. I'll be right back.
You been or not? I'm trying to do something with it.
I'm gonna highlight stuff on your computer while you're gone.
Sure. That file you wanted to highlight something, you should probably just continue.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah. The YouTube stuff.
On the link stuff, do you know all the cards you read? Is it?
Let me double check. Oh, did I just, yeah, I might have accidentally just copy pasted all of that in there. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I just not 100%
Um,
sure which ones you read. Can you look back?
Epps. Yeah, he read Epps and, oh, well, that's on the winner's win debate. He read Epps and that finite card, and then he read the Buchanan card, O'Neill, and Howell.
Okay. Just like no.
Oh, the inevitable part?
No, yeah. Drone's inevitable. Can I just like look at the 1AC?
Yeah.
So I keep it come over here.
No, there's no connecting out. Sure. Sorry, I'm just totally fucking you.
That's a
I'll keep my light.
It says you're connected.
Yeah, I know, it's just like, gotta like check you on that, you never know.
With this piece of crap. I think I might have lost my phone.
Really? I can double check my school book because I'm gonna take
Probably.
it.
No, don't worry. You do your thing. I'll like look for it. And that's right here.
What time is the next parent supposed to come out? Like,
Even a while.
interesting debate. I thought both teams debated pretty well. I ended up voting AF on the permutation argument, and I'll go through the specifics of that. Mostly, I think just like big picture issue is that all of your like link arguments are about the plan by itself and not about the permutation. I think had you won an argument that the permutation actually resulted in Obama fighting for his authority, then this wouldn't be an issue. But both the 2AC and the 1AR made pretty clearly the argument about how the permutation, and it also kind of just makes sense to me why would Obama have to fight for his authority if there was a counterplan that sort of agreed with, like, does that make sense? Like, if the counterplan agreed, Obama wouldn't argue against himself, basically. And I think that absent characterization of that framing of the permutation, and given how you debated the link argument, it takes out 100%, and there's not really a net benefit. There's not really a net benefit to the counterplan. Now, I'll go through the specifics about that in a second, but just so you know how I made my decision. After I sort of evaluated the permutation, I was like, well, it's not completely over for you because I think that maybe you still can take out 100% of the AF or win 100% solvency deficit. Big picture issue is just like an introduction of the counterplan. I think flips presumption for the affirmative, absent a net characterization of that. But that's a pretty heavy burden I think to put on you, just because like if you didn't answer the permutation, then why would you make that presumption arg? But having like a reason why presumption still goes negative would have been super helpful, even if you thought the perm was a threat. But I do think like your like alt cause like cruise missile shift argument doesn't take out 100% of the act, just because they do have this piece of evidence that says it's still likely that we would use drones as the alternative, even in not like, so we would switch to personality strikes, not or whatever strikes we would switch to, and not cruise missiles. And the threshold for that is pretty low, just because I think that, I was going to look at all the solvency deficit stuff, but ultimately the just like presumption flips out for the counterplan makes it difficult for you to win. On the specifics of the permutation, I think that you had like a pretty decent argument about just like why Obama would fight to maintain his authority, and that seems like a relevant distinction between the plan and the counterplan. But I don't think that the like Kreiner evidence doesn't really, or at least I don't know if that card can be highlighted to make that argument, but certainly the way it's highlighted doesn't make that argument. I do think the best piece of evidence that you have on like will fight for his authority is O'Neill. And so that's something I think you might want to use better to answer the permutation. But regardless of that, I just don't think that, I think that certainly if Obama fought for his authority, it would cost capital, but the way they framed permutation, he wouldn't fight for his authority. You had another link argument that you could have maybe used a little bit better, was just about like legislation.
Yeah, the focus light stuff.
Yeah, but that doesn't really, that's not consistent with the link argument that you're explaining, because it's like, if Obama was fighting for legislation, then the light stuff would make sense. But fighting, I don't like get how that, because the light argument is just like if Obama fights for legislation to get it passed, that's much harder and would require political capital. But the way that the plan operates, or the way that the plan operates, and certainly the way the permutation operates, the light stuff doesn't really apply. I mean, I thought you did the link stuff pretty well, and so that's why I was willing to read a lot of the link evidence and see if any of it applied. But just absent a re-characterization of the permutation, it's tough to vote on any net benefit. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on, but that's how I voted. Yeah, if you have any questions about that or anything else.
No.
Yeah, I think just maybe spending some more time on this permutation, or just
Yeah, I immediately thought that right when I sat down. I was like, shouldn't have gone for the presumption thing. Should have just taken that time and put on the perm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking that too. Or I was definitely just thinking somehow you need to put more time on the perm.
Yeah, and getting rid of that is the easiest thing to axe, because does it make that much sense in the first place?
Or cut out one of the impacts on politics, because I don't think you need both U.S.-China relations and trade. You probably just need one, and it seems like China's probably better. So you could have cut some time out on that. Yeah.
Aside from the counterplan, how did you think about the politics, the arguments that we were going for?
Okay, so I thought you were going for the right arguments on politics. I think that Probably the healthcare thumper would have gotten less mileage than you expected in front of me, just because you did concede the argument about like the foreign policy, domestic policy trade-off thing. So that would have made it like pretty difficult for you to win, just at like basic level. But that argument seems to be true and supported by evidence. The healthcare thumper, not their argument. I didn't read their evidence, but just at a purely technical level, I think that thumper argument would have been tough for you to read. I think PC not key, what you were like getting some mileage out of that argument. I think maybe in the 1AR you should have read and maybe the reason you didn't do it is because you didn't want them to read evidence to respond to this, but just like top level reasons why political capital as a theory fails, not just about Iran, although if you had more Iran evidence that would have been better to read. But I think there's political capital theory argument that supports your election argument. And I think that would have been a good piece of evidence to read. If there was like, and I know it exists for like immigration, I don't know if it exists at a general level, but just like political capital doesn't matter because, I mean, you could probably just read the, what's the like Xbox evidence, you know what I'm talking about? The one that's like,
Dickinson?
Yeah, Dickinson.
Yeah.
It's like, people don't really listen to the president, they only care about their voters. And if you just read that piece of evidence, that jives really well with the specific argument that you're making about Iran. And so I think that had you read that, it would have been like pretty tough for them to, obviously it would have been more justified for them to read their political capital theory argument, although I still kind of think it's okay, but you reading a piece of evidence still justifies it a lot more. But like it just really cements the argument you're going for. Yeah, I mean those were like the main arguments you were going for in politics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maybe I felt like you didn't, like the amount of time you spent on like impact defense to politics probably wasn't like a substantial portion to really take out any impact argument they were really making, just because they like kind of extended some warrants that weren't really answered. But like PC doesn't work was like, I thought a pretty good argument. I think somehow you guys maybe in the 2NR cut down the number of cards you read, although I felt like you read cards in all places that you needed to read cards, so I don't know if maybe that's like a 1NR thing, just like being more efficient, maybe not read like, cut down on like one of the impacts, or maybe not even read these 2 cards at the bottom on like causes nuke war, causes miscalc, just because I think probably the 1NC card makes that, although I didn't read it, but I'm just kind of hoping that the 1NC makes like